and you let your light shine. You let it shine, and then what do you do with it? You know, a lot of people in this world say, I'm going to let my light shine, and I'm going to make sure that somebody gets my light. And they take their little flashlight and they shove it down people's throats and they shine it in people's eyes. That's not what Jesus said. He said, put it up high. It's a non-intrusive kind of shining. It's a non-controlling kind of shining. It is a shining of light that makes a huge difference in the world because it doesn't force outcomes. I let my light shine and I do not force outcomes. Together, I let my light shine and I do not force outcomes. Now, think about that light. You know, do you know who invented the street light? Benjamin Franklin. And do you know how he got it all over the world, whether street lamps all over the world? He knew that if he went to the city fathers of Philadelphia and he said to them, hey, I've invented this thing. You put it on all the street corners and out in front of people's houses and it'll shine light and it's really great. That they'd say, nah. So what he did was he put one in front of his house and lit it every night. Night after night after night. And somebody else saw it and they thought, I'd like one of those. And they put up one in their house and somebody else did it. And somebody else did it until finally the whole city of Philadelphia was engulfed in light. And somebody from New York figured it out. Oh, we should do this here. And it took off and people from Europe had traveled there and they saw it and they went, oh, yes. Light. This is how light travels. You know, this is why things are changing. Look at how things are changing. Look at attitudes, long held, being released, but not through force. You know, light of truth is speaking your truth and then people hearing your truth. Thoreau said, it really takes, to tell the truth, it takes two people. It takes the truth teller and the person who listens. So, we need to make sure that as we shine the light of truth, we get the support that we need in order to shine that light. So make sure you've got your support system intact. You've got your support group, your 12-step group. You've got your trusted friends. You've got, you know, some confidant or counselor, somebody that you can share that truth with. Because what happens when you tell the truth and it's heard is that the light gets stronger and stronger and stronger, and the vibratory rate gets faster and faster and faster, and the light grows brighter and brighter and brighter. And yet you say to yourself, well, that's going to make everything better and better and better. And not necessarily. Because what happens is that anything that's unlike the light comes up. When there's a brighter light, the shadows get more distinct and you see more things to shine the light on. And the image that's always come to me is of a top-loading washing machine. How many of you, not your front loaders, do not raise your hand, how many of you have a top-loading washing machine? What happens when it's out of balance? There's an unbalanced load. Ours walks across the room and slams and whams like somebody's taking a sledgehammer to it. Now, why is it? Because it's unbalanced. And the faster it vibrates, the faster the rate, the more, and this is an analogy for the light, the faster, the more it whams. And then what does it tell you got to do? You got to balance the load. You got to rebalance the load. You got to go in there and move things around. And how do you do that? Okay, so let's say you're in a situation and you've been working on yourself. You've been clearing out those parts of yourself. You've been bringing in more light. You've been lifting yourself up in the light, and then you're feeling out of balance. What do you do? What do you do? How many of you know Walter Starkey, the metaphysical writer? Walter Starkey shared with me one time that every time before he would give a Sunday talk, that he would go through an agitation, almost like a soul upheaval every single time, and then he says, I have to clear it. And the way he cleared it was he found out what the false beliefs were that he was holding. And he said, it's always a glorious opportunity for me to do an inner cleansing and an inner inventory. And we've got a little sheet of paper. Lynn created the revised agitated energy process based upon the writings of Dr. Mary Allen, and it's right outside Fellowship Hall. Pick up a copy, and it's got a little space for every one of the questions. What is the emotion I'm feeling? Second, what story am I telling myself that causes me to feel this way? And third, what new perspective could I take that would be calming to me? And you keep working with it until you feel calm. And so you say, well, it's a great opportunity. But, you know, you say, well, I'll shine my light. I'll lift up my light. I'm going to shine, and everybody around me is going to like it. Not necessarily. when you shine the light, it raises the vibratory rate. It's true as individuals, it's true in churches. And you know, when you write, and then it brings up the things that need to be adjusted. Great example of this was Dr. Brew Joy, who was the founder, the father of the holistic medicine movement, the alternative medicine movement in the United States. How many of you have read anything? Remember him, Dr. Brew Joy? He's no longer popular, but back in 35 before, when I started in ministry, he was very, very popular because in the early 1970s, he was trained at Johns Hopkins. He was on the Mayo Clinic. He moved to Los Angeles, became the physician to the stars. He had this incredible, lucrative, wonderful career as a physician, and he started having spiritual experiences, and they got deeper and deeper and deeper, and his guidance was so strong. You've got to start incorporating your spirituality into medicine, the mind-body connection, but beyond that, the spirit-mind-body connection. And he did not get really great responses when he did it. It was an era where people weren't open to this. Holistic medicine, I think he's the guy who thought up that term. And so he was guided. You've got to quit your practice and open up a new practice that is spiritually based, that is holistic medicine, that is alternative medicine. Today, many of us know about that. We may know people who do this. Even in Chicago, it is perfectly part of the norm. But then, even in Los Angeles, it was not. And he resisted it, and he resisted it. He had a nice house, he had a nice car, he had a great life. I mean, he was doing really well. He had notoriety and fame, and he had substance, and he didn't do it. And then he came down with pancreatitis, and it was life-threatening. And his guidance, as part of his work, he told people to dialogue with the parts of your body that have the difficulty. So he dialogued with his pancreas, and his pancreas told him, you've got to follow your guidance for this to go away. And he didn't want to do it. And it got worse and worse and worse until he was in the hospital, and he finally said, okay, I surrender. And he closed down his practice. Oh, and it was, there's some bumps along the way, but he opened up this new practice that was holistic medicine, started training other people, and what we see today is largely because he did it, and his pancreatitis cleared up starting the day that he made that decision. I told that story in my first church in a class, and there was a woman who, as I told the story, her face became white as a sheet. She did not look happy. She came up to me afterwards. She said, yesterday I was diagnosed with pancreatitis. And she shared with me, this is like 35 years ago, I'm in an abusive marriage. Her husband was a big executive for a big corporation. She had all the material things you could want, and she said, I'm very comfortable. And she shared with me that story that always offends people about, the baby birds, or the birds that are flying south for the winter, and then one of them goes down and on the way back north, and gets in the cow pasture and ends up getting stuck in a cow patty, but figures, it's warm and I'm comfortable. And the rest of the birds notice the next winter that it's still down there. It got stuck. And she says, I'm that baby bird. I'm that stuck person. And she's the one who told me that story, so blame her. But she said, I know what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to separate from him. And I love the man, but he's abusive. And she had come going in and out of hospital. She had substance abuse problems. She had a lot of problems trying to cope with it. And she realized this is the thing. And she was diagnosed with pancreatitis. She knew that story was for her. So what she did was she made the choices. She made the decisions. It didn't happen all at once, but she did it. Her pancreatitis cleared up. And furthermore, he got help. He got treatment. And she passed on 25 years later, and they were blissfully happy. They were retired and moved to a horse farm in Kentucky and had a wonderful life together. Doesn't always work out that way, but it was the only possibility for things to work out that way. Now, why am I telling you this? Because there's something in your life that you need to do, and it may not be something dramatic, a step that you need to take. I am ready to take my next spiritual step. Together, I am ready to take my next spiritual step. And not everybody's happy with this. And so but they weren't either. And yet what resulted? Greater joy. greater joy, greater possibility. Remember the quote from Jesus where he said, if you let your own light shine, others will see what you're up to, and then God becomes whole and complete. How can God not already be complete? Because God created each one of us to fulfill the potential of God expressing his light. And God is not complete until you fulfill that potential and shine your light. It's a very strange concept. God, who is infinite and whole and complete, requires us to step up to the plate and shine our lights in order to be whole and complete. Jesus told the disciples, I'm the light that's shining over everything. And when you gather and experience your oneness, you'll be filled with light. But if you are separate, you'll be filled with darkness. And when people ask you where you come from, say to them, I come from that place where the light gives birth to itself and then observes itself. The light is giving birth to itself and then observing itself. This is some deep stuff. I'm talking about something that's called chemicalization. And I remember talking to a friend of mine, a prominent Unity minister, and I shared with him many years ago. He said, we're just talking shop, and he said, what are you talking about Sunday? And I said, I'm going to talk about chemicalization. He said, whoa, on a Sunday? You're a brave soul. And I said, well, a lot of people, they're not ready for it, but a lot of people are and they don't know it. What is chemicalization? Emily Cady wrote a chapter about something called chemicalization, which is what happens when the light is shining and shining and shining and you get an unbalanced load and you have to clear out the negative, whatever it is, beliefs that you're holding, beliefs such as you use this process to clear out, and it's a powerful, powerful experience. But it was a chapter of Lessons in Truth called Chemicalization, and when I was in ministerial school, I remember reading chapters from Catherine Ponder, she would write about it, and Emmett Fox, and I didn't realize that Emily Cady had invented it because it wasn't in the book. In 1978, when I was in school, we were studying Lessons in Truth, and somebody showed up with this lost chapter and passed it around the room. And we went, well, duh, that's what's happening to all of us. We're in this deep, powerful spiritual process of ministerial school. And as one of my classmates said, it's 20 years of spiritual growth, 30 years of emotional growth, and 2 years of hell. So we're going through this stuff, and here it explains it. Oh, I'm not crazy. It's part of my healing process. There are ways to manage it. There's ways to work with it. I don't have to run away from it. I don't have to bury it. And it validates the experience that I'm having. Emmett Fox wrote about it. He said, it may seem like everything's going wrong all at once. And this may be disconcerting to you, but it's really a good sign. Suppose your whole world is rocking on its foundation. Well, hold on steady and let it rock. When the rocking is over, the picture will reassemble itself into something much nearer to what you desire. This unbalanced load. And how do you let go? How do you let go of this stuff or rebalance your load? You retrain your false beliefs. You let go of this thing. And sometimes you lose things, let them go. Sometimes you lose people and let them go. Sometimes you lose circumstances and let them go. Yet we stay stuck in the limitation of this limited consciousness we're in. Back many years ago, 30 years ago, I was, once a week I would go get a massage for an hour and a half from a massage therapist who was a religious science practitioner and a psychotherapist with a master's degree in psychotherapy. Triple whammy. Massage, psychotherapy, and treatment, prayer treatment. So this was a wonderful thing. But one day she shared with me, I'm going to have, in the next month or so, I'm going to have to get out of here because they're going to remodel her apartment, which was above a garage next door to a house. And she said, but I'm having a hard time. Will you hold with me in prayer and treat with me for the right place? And I said, sure, I'll do it. And every week, as we got closer and closer to the deadline, she couldn't find anything. She said, every door is slammed. Every time I look for something, it falls through. She says, and I'm starting to get a little bit annoyed right now. And finally, the last week, before they were going to show up with the workers, and her landlady said, you're going to have to move out. She knew I was a minister, so she's kind of got in my face. She said, I want to know how come my prayers aren't working. And I want you to tell me. And I said, I don't know. The only thing that comes to me is read the book of Job. Oh. The book of Job is all about purpose of suffering, and that it has a happy ending. It does, but it's a tough, tough little book. Well, she was not happy with me, and she read the book of Job, but she still wasn't happy, and I showed up the next week, and there was dust everywhere. She was up there, she said, I don't have any electricity, I don't have running water, my landlady's been nice enough to let me, go into her house, every other day and use the facilities, but whatever, and I have to go to, it was a tough situation. And she did not understand what was going on. Well, there was a worker who was showing up to do all this work, the plumbing, the electrical, all the different woodwork, and she told me later, I'm a snob and, highly educated, whatever, and I just didn't really want to talk to this guy. I mean, we don't have anything in common. It turned out the guy was highly educated. He was a boat builder who was a craftsman, and he was just helping out his friend and doing this work. And they started talking, and I performed the wedding 6 weeks later. Now, you say, this is a limitation. This isn't a good thing. I didn't sign on for this. The heck you didn't. You signed on for it because you're letting go of your old consciousness. I am letting go of my old consciousness. Together, I am letting go of my old consciousness, and I am open to fresh new good. Together, and I am open to my fresh new good. This is what Catherine Ponder said in her chapter about chemicalization. If you're experiencing something that looks like loss or failure or change or readjustment, if that's facing you, remember this great truth. When a right-thinking person seems to lose something, it's because their inner self is clearing the way for something better. I remember when we first got a lawn. We moved to finally a house. We'd always lived, I'd always lived in apartments or condos or something. And I thought when the dandelions came up, I mowed them and they went away, right? No, they didn't go. I had to dig them up at the root. And this is the digging up at the root. This is the releasing of these things. And sometimes incredible good comes from grappling with these problems. I remember a guy, this is many, many years ago, and he was an attorney, and he was in the church, and let's just put it this way, he wasn't easy to deal with. He was very demanding. He just kind of the person that when in fellowship, you just kind of dance around him because he always had something, and people would do everybody. But this guy, he had a brain tumor, and he worked with it medically. He worked with it in consciousness. He went into complete remission, and as he worked with it, his consciousness became sweeter and sweeter and sweeter, and he became one of the nicest people you could ever imagine. Why? Because he worked with the consciousness. He worked with he did the inner work. You say, but I want a result. I want the answer. But it's like, to me, it's like a treasure hunt. You remember when you were a kid and you were on a treasure hunt and you get a clue and then you go to this other place and you pick up a clue. And they would tell you to go to this other place and pick up a clue. And you go from place to place to place, picking up clues. It would take you on a zigzag journey that got you finally to the end where you would find the treasure. But it's like that. When you shine the light of truth, that light shines, but it doesn't shine all the way to the end. It shines just far enough for you to get the information you need to take your next spiritual step. I am willing to take my next spiritual step. Together, I am willing to take my next spiritual step. And so you say, well, why doesn't it show me the whole picture? Because it's a process. Life's a process. Your journey is a process. Don't give up on yourself. Don't give up on yourself halfway through the journey. Don't stop yourself from your growth because you're afraid to take a spiritual step. Stand up for yourself and stand up to yourself. Because when that light shines and you get an unbalanced load, it's something for you to look at within your own self. So ask, what is this telling me? What is this teaching me? Remember when Brew Joy and when this woman dialoguing with their pancreas. You're the pancreas, it's like you say, how does a pancreas talk? But do your journaling, write your things out. Use your imagination. Be playful. Ask, be willing. Say, I'm willing to see this. I'm willing to find out what is in it for me. That's like a classmate of mine. This guy, his name was Steve Sams. He was 5'2". He was as wide as he was tall. And he was a Jamaican man. And whenever some problem happened, he would always say, What's in it for me? And the guy would always find something. And so what's in it for you? How can you use this to your advantage? What can you do to shine the light of truth and to open up to new possibilities? It means being willing to stand up to yourself. It means being willing to face the issues as they come up. And it means being willing to do the work. And I know that doing the work is not popular, but it is fulfilling. And it is joy-filled, because in every one of these cases, how did it turn out? Including the book of Job. Better. In fact, there was a depthfulness that wasn't there before. There was a richness that wasn't there before. You are in this life journey not just to survive or get around or whatever, but you are here not only for yourself, but for the people around you to shine for them. You say, for what purpose is this happening? It's always happening for the purpose of soul growth. Always for soul growth. You say, but it's not just, it's not fair, it's not right, it's not what I wanted. That may be true, but you have to work. It's on a third dimensional level, but on a spiritual level, there's something else going on. And you can work day by day, and you may not know consciously. You may not know consciously, but you're going to work with it. You're going to work through it. And the benefits often happen from the very thing that you say, well, this shouldn't be happening, But you've got to let the light shine through you. And how do you let the light shine through you? Well, first of all, by being yourself. The only light that you can shine is the light that shines through you. You've got to shine through your own authentic self. Richard Jafala was the co-director of Silent Unity for years, and I remember Richard Jafala telling me that he set his wristwatch alarm for every 30 minutes to beep once quietly so that he would look and ask himself, am I being authentic? Not, and here's the head of Silent Unity, prayer ministry, not, I'm going to be spiritual, am I in touch with God, am I in some kind of transcendent state, but just, am I being authentic? Am I being myself? And I remember writing down when he told me about this, what he said. He said, in a symphony, if a violin decided to be a drum, it would be a terrible drum, and the greatest single thing that I can do is to be myself. Now, if I have to become somebody else in order to be loved, all the love that I receive isn't even for me, because that person doesn't even exist. So you have to be the you that you are. Let that authentic and real self shine forth. Let that lamp. But you gotta clean off the lamp. You gotta lift up the lamp. You gotta and look at the world that we see ourselves in today. The opportunities are there. The world is changing, and sometimes people have to speak the truth, and sometimes people don't like it. I remember Harry Truman. Harry Truman grew up in probably the most he was in a very racist environment that he grew up in. This is, I told this story at 9, and it's a little bit of a nerd sideline, but when he went into World War II and he showed up at his grandmother's house in his army uniform to say goodbye to his grandmother for several years, she kicked him off the porch, told him to go away, and said, I told myself I'd never allow a Yankee on my porch, and I'm not going to start now with you. And that was it. Wow. Bye-bye, Grandma. And he grew up in that environment, but he knew something because of his experience. He integrated the armed forces in the late 1940s, and he caught so much flack for it. The party was split. It was obvious that he was going to end up losing the election in 48, and of course he ended up winning. But because he stood up for the truth. And he was talking about this once in a speech, and somebody said, give him hell, Harry. And he said, I don't give anybody hell. I just tell the truth. Of course, they think it's hell. And so, letting that light shine. If you want to make a difference in the world, if you want to be a difference maker in your world, it isn't to get everybody lined up behind you. It isn't to try to manipulate people or shine your truth down the throat of everybody. But when you shine the light of truth, you will have an effect to the extent that you are detached from outcomes and you move into a consciousness that is non-attached. And this is a very interesting thing. Shining the light of truth. That's why Jesus called it light. Light is non-intrusive. Light has no opposite. We say darkness. No, darkness is the absence of light. It's not the opposite of light. This is kind of is a little disturbing to some people, but I read an interview a few years ago with the chief exorcist of the Catholic Church in the United States, who said there was no such thing as evil. You think he's talking himself out of a job, but he said, if I believed that darkness had reality, I couldn't do my job. There is only light, there is only good, and anything else is just a false belief. It's a false belief that is like an agitated thing. And he said, if you shine light, there is no argument. And he's not alone. Remember, a very conservative Pope John Paul II said there was no personal devil and no place called hell. He said that. So people are waking up to this stuff. This is that these concepts, although you deal with it. I mean, if we have darkness in the room and somebody yells fire, you have to deal with it. You probably bruise your shins on stuff. But the answer is not to say this is a terrible thing. It's to turn on the light. And that's what it is. So where in your life can you turn on light and realize that you don't measure darkness? You can only measure light in lumens. There is no measurement for darkness. Again, more nerd talk, but it has truth to it. In your life, whatever the circumstance is simply a false belief, is simply an unbalanced load, is simply something that is calling you forth to shine your light of truth and to move forward in a powerful, powerful way. And we're being called to do that right here and right now. And so guess what? I'm going to shut up, and we're going to do this work right now. And whatever's going on with you, whatever's happening in your life, just breathe in and just breathe out and just open yourself to the light of truth. Open yourself to the light of truth. Just open yourself to the light of truth. See that you are the light of the world. Imagine this light shining forth through you. And maybe the ways to do that would be to visualize it, to feel a tingling in the very core of your being, on your skin, all around you, that your vibratory rate is lifting up. Imagining that you are being lifted up higher, put up on a lampstand and candle stand, and you're shining a great radius all around you. And if there is anything in my world that requires more light, I ask for a revelation. I ask for guidance. More than that, I give thanks for the answer that is now coming forth, that is now revealing to me that which I need to see in order to increase my capacity to shine more light. Just do this now. And whatever it is that you are experiencing, know that on a level of your being that you know not of, you are receiving your answer. You're receiving your guidance. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And so it is. We take a moment. I'm just going to share the unofficial slogan of Silent Unity, our prayer ministry at Unity headquarters. A friend of mine who's worked there for years said that among themselves their slogan is, God answers the prayer, we answer the phone. And so we have a role as a lamp. And then there's the light. God answers the prayer, we answer the phone. So if you have any paper in your hand, set it down and set it aside. And we take a deep breath, we let it out, we open our hands. And we realize that we have a role as the lamp of God, as the light of the world. And we listen to the words of the Master, who said, you are the light of the world. A city that is built on a hilltop can never be hidden. And neither do you light a candle and then hide it underneath a bushel. But instead you put it high up on a candle stand where it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, you should let your own light shine so that others will see what you're about, and so God can be whole and complete. What an interesting thought, that God is not complete without our participation in the light. For this we were created, to be lamps of that light, to be the light of the world. And God does not reach God's full potential until each one of us shines that light. That's why we were created. Jesus said, if anyone asks where you came from, say, I came from that place where the light gave birth to itself and then observed itself. And so, lift up into this light. Be this light. You might even feel the tingling of the presence of light all over your skin, deep within your being. You can feel the spaciousness, the brightness of the light. You can lift up. Imagine that you are that lamp that's being set up high on the candle stand. Imagine that the higher you go, the greater the radius of the light that you can share, and the brighter you become as you open up to God. That light is not separate from you. It's already innate within you. Jesus said, as you become one, the light becomes brighter. Only in separation is there darkness. So let your light shine. Experience the oneness, the light. He said, God and I are one, and if you've seen me, you've seen God. And that light shines forth through each one of us as well. So if there's some aspect of your life that requires more light, just feel the light shining through you, in you, and as you to that. See the light shining, radiant, emanating, lifted up, lofty. Feel, see, and know the light in you, through you, as you. When your mind wanders, just bring it back to being the light, seeing the light, feeling it, shining. Light. Light has no opposite. Light is all there is. You can never measure darkness. It has no reality. Only the light. Only the light. Thank you, God, that we are the light of the world. We lift up and shine. Jesus said, the light shines forth through each one of us. So we're going to bless our offering, and our offering statement is, I give from the truth that I am, and I receive abundantly. Together.
I give from the truth that I am, and I receive abundantly.
And silently. And again aloud together.
I give from the truth that I am, and I receive abundantly.
And so it is.